Hello, welcome back to another ShefF1 video. I'm here with just Seb this week. Rudy cannot make it due to some technical difficulties, but I'm sure he'll be back for the review. But it is, of course, the Imola Grand Prix this weekend, and this is after 2 years of not having it on the calendar after there was floods last year and it was cancelled. So it's definitely one that I've looked out for this season on the calendar. I think a lot could maybe happen this weekend. We've got Ferrari, Red Bull and Mercedes bringing upgrades, and it'll be interesting to see, can Red Bull, elevate, their stance already, or Ferrari, be able to bring the fight to Red Bull. And of course, McLaren last week after winning, can they remain on their level? Who knows, but it's definitely going to be a good weekend. So we've had some breaking news in the paddock this week. Alex Albon has signed a multi-year contract at Williams. And Seb, what do you think? Do you think that was the right decision for him to make? Of course, Williams have kind of been going backwards this season. Do you think it was the right move?
Yeah, I think it's the right decision for him. I think that clearly, the rumours were at the start of the season were maybe linking him with that Mercedes seat, but they've sort of died down. He hasn't had a great start to the season, so I don't think he's in a position to really merit a move to the likes of Mercedes or maybe even a Red Bull that was rumoured. So I think sticking with Williams, I think building a team around him is going to be really something I think he will flourish in. I think that having that team built entirely around him, I think that's the best move to go for. If he goes to another team, maybe, the pressure that we saw him, succumb to when he was at Red Bull could happen. And I just think, being the main focus in a team that does have potential, they do have, 2026 is a fresh start for them. They could, you never know, be up there. They've got, obviously James Vowles, everyone always, talks about really highly. And he knows he's always going to be the number one driver there. So I think that's his best chances. Ultimately, he's a driver that's, he's got the dreams of winning a title. And, he doesn't want to just go to a team and just be a second driver. He wants to be the number one driver at a team. And this is, I think, his best opportunity to do that. So even though they have gone backwards, I do think that ultimately, I think it's the right decision for him. Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, he was definitely rumoured to be going to Mercedes, have that as an option with George Russell, his friend. But it's definitely been rumoured that Max Verstappen could be, looking at that seat this weekend. Apparently his representatives are going to be present at the Imola Grand Prix, due to obviously Adrian Newey coming out in Miami that he will be leaving the team at the end of the season. Also Carlos Sainz as well, he's going to be looking for a seat. He said today in the press conference that he still has no news yet. So if you had to have a prediction on who's going to have that Mercedes seat now, who do you think it would be? I mean, in my 2025 drive predictions, I did say Pierre Gasly. That unfortunately does not look at all likely. I think his teammate Esteban Ocon looks more likely, but I don't think it'll be either of them. I actually think it'll be Kimi Antonelli now. I just think that the noise around him potentially coming in at some point for Williams this season, I think he'll do okay there, and I think that they'll learn from Ollie Behrman, and I think they will throw him in. Whether that's the right decision or not, I'm not sure, but I think it seems more likely that they're going to take a risk on him now.
Do you not think Max would go there?
I just can't see it. As much as I think it would be so exciting, they're just not a good enough proposition at the moment. They just seem a bit of a mess when they're bringing upgrades to races and they just don't work because they just don't understand the car. Why would you want to go there? I know 2026, the rumours that they've got the power unit stuff right and that maybe that's going to be more of the dependent factor on whether their car's good. So maybe, but even then I still think that's a risk. I just don't think, when you look at, Lewis Hamilton leaving the team, he knows that team in and out, and if he's thinking that he needs to go, why would Max Verstappen then look at that and go like, oh, actually, I'll go there? I think there's a reason Hamilton's left, and I can't see it getting much better for Mercedes, and I just can't see Verstappen going to a team where, they're not going to be competing at the top end, and it's a guarantee.
Yeah, I feel like the best two prospects other than Red Bull in Formula 1 right now is McLaren and Ferrari, and they've got their driver lineups confirmed for next year. So it's a strange one if Max Verstappen is looking for a move away from the Red Bull team. Looking at a team that I just mentioned there, Ferrari, who are going to be bringing upgrades this weekend. Xavi Marquez, who has been Charles Leclerc's race engineer since he started in there at Ferrari, is stepping away from his position and being replaced by Brian Bozzi. Why do you think that is? I mean, there's not been too many rumours on what it could be, but do you not think that's a bit of a strange thing to happen, especially a home Grand Prix in Imola? What could be the reason for it?
I have no idea. I have absolutely no idea.
I mean, for me personally, I feel like, is there a fallout in the team? I mean, Fred for sure wants to come in. He's, you know, looking at taking away Mercedes engineers. And maybe Xavi doesn't like that. He might have been offered a position in another team. But I think it's really weird because he's really iconic. Some of the, you know, box, like, and
stay out
as he's in the pit lane. But no, it'll be a miss, I think. And of course, another miss we're having is Crofty won't be in the commentating box this weekend. Which will be no lights out and away we go, which will be a bit strange. But moving on, of course, that is all really the roundup of news this week in Formula 1. We will move on to our predictions for the Imola Grand Prix. And of course, we're going to start off with pole position. We have no sprint race this week. That's what we've had the last 2 weekends. But going straight into qualifying, who is going to be your pole sitter, Seb?
I'm going to trust them Ferrari upgrades, especially in qualifying. I'm going to go for Charles Leclerc. I think he's had an okay start to the season. He's definitely grown into it. Obviously, there was all the hype about Carlos Sainz at this first few races. I think that's died down a bit, and Charles is making the team his own a bit now. And I think that he's going to continue that good form. And I think he's going to, you know, we know how he is around one lap. And, you know, it's a home Grand Prix. And I think the upgrades, they're going to tell. And I think Charles Leclerc is going to, I think he's going to do it quite comfortably as well. I think it'll be a Ferrari 1 lap pace. I think it's going to be really impressive.
No, I mean, you've literally just said everything that I was going to say there. I mean, I've gone for Charles Leclerc as well. I do think, you know, obviously Red Bull and Ferrari bringing upgrades. I just think for Red Bull have actually made quite a lot of, you know, not really got used to the car in the first, you know, few sessions, and I don't know if maybe they'll be used to these upgrades by the time it's qualifying. So I think, as of course you said, Charles Leclerc over 1 lap pace is incredible. So yeah, I think he could potentially take it, especially the magic of Imola and being home race for Ferrari. But Rudy has gone with a typical Max Verstappen, which I guess is a guarantee there for him. I mean, we could be completely wrong, which will most likely be the case. But you never know, and I will kick myself if Charles Leclerc gets pole and I didn't go for it. So yeah, Rudy's gone for Max Verstappen. Just because me and Seb chose Charles Leclerc as our pole sitter does not mean he's going to be the star of qualifying. And have you gone for Charles Leclerc as your star of qualifying?
I haven't. I've gone for someone, I think we've said a lot in predictions because of his amazing form so far this season. I think he's going to continue that. Yuki Tsunoda. I think that once again, he's been star of the midfield when it comes to qualifying especially, and obviously the races as well. But I just think this is their home race as well, RB. I'm not really sure if it still counts the home race with the rebrand and things like that. But I mean, it is, you know, it's the closest to Faenza. And I just think, you know, he knows what that means to the team. And I think he's going to bring it home. I think he just going to continue his good form, and Q3 once again for Yuki Tsunoda, and I think he'll be the star of qualifying.
Yeah, of course. I think Yuki Tsunoda's had a great season, and he's definitely been the star driver in his team, so maybe that'll continue hopefully for you. But I've gone for a McLaren driver. Of course, they brought them upgrades last weekend, and I think they'll continue, especially since Oscar Piastri is going to be my star of qualifying, and he didn't have the full setup last week, and he still did amazing, and I think he's going to do really well. Track he's a bit more familiar with, and I think overall he is going to just potentially out-qualify Lando. I don't know, that's just gut feeling, but he did really well with having, you know, it was 200th of a second less than Lando that was predicted that upgrades would bring, and he qualified above him in sprint quali, definitely, but I'm not sure about actual quali. but yeah, that's why I think Oscar Piastri is going to be the star of quali. I think he's going to out-qualify Lando Norris, and I think that'd be a really impressive thing to do after Lando is finally a race winner. But Rudy has gone for that race winner, and that is Lando Norris, and maybe, you know, similar reasons. The McLaren car looked really quick. Even after the safety car start, him and Max Verstappen was only just behind him, and he still dragged on, and hopefully, you know, that pace could go to quali in Imola, and hopefully for Rudy, Lando Norris could be the star of quali. But of course, we're not all positive over here on ShefF1, and we do have a prediction for flop of quali. And who have you gone for, Seb?
I found this one really hard this week. I just couldn't think of anyone that I genuinely thought was going to have a flop. So I've gone for Nico Hulkenberg. I feel like that's just going to backfire completely. He's had an incredible start to the season, especially. He's been, very similar to Yuki Tsunoda in the fact, the amount of times he's got to Q3. He's always him and Tsunoda, those two that are in the midfield that get into Q3. So I'm just sort of hoping that if he doesn't get into Q3 by his standards, that'll be, a flop for him. I think he still might actually out-qualify Magnussen, but just not hitting the heights that we know that he can do. And I think that obviously, he's probably maybe going to relax a little bit more, knowing he's got that Sauber seat potentially. Doesn't really need to make his mark on the team or prove himself to the team. So maybe, could read in that a bit too much. But yeah, I'm just going to go for Nico Hulkenberg. Do I actually think it? I have no idea, but I've got to go for someone, so I'm going for Nico.
No, that's actually a really good point that, due to his standards, if he doesn't really get into Q3, it's a bit of a flop for Nico this season. But I have gone for maybe a driver who, if he doesn't get into Q3, that is certainly a flop, and that is Sergio Perez, especially if, them upgrades really do take Red Bull to a whole new level, and, Max goes and puts it on pole by, 0.5 of a second, which could potentially be realistic here. But I think Sergio Perez may struggle with these new upgrades. I don't know, maybe not take to them as well. He's actually had quite a good season, constantly being on the podium. But of course, last weekend he wasn't. And maybe that'll continue now. He always has a good start to a season. That's been a trend over the last few years, but slowly starts to drop off. And I think he may make it to Q3, but I think he could potentially be at the lower end of that, whether that be 9th or 8th. And I think that certainly, due to his, expectations, should be a flop. But Rudy, on the other hand, has gone with Carlos Sainz, and that actually kind of goes with our, pole sitter prediction, Charles Leclerc. And of course, Carlos Sainz had a great start to the season, a lot of expectations on his behalf, a lot of pressure potentially. Rudy might be thinking that, looking for a seat now. They're starting to go, people are starting to, silly season's really coming up, and maybe that pressure could get to him. Maybe that's what Rudy's thinking, we don't know. But it definitely correlates with our pole sitter predictions, and I guess if he's out-qualified by his teammate with upgrades, it'll be a bit of a flop of a quality session for Carlos Sainz. But moving on from qualifying, we have the race, and what have you gone for your podium, Seb?
Starting off with third place, I've actually gone for the man who's Rudy's flop of qualifying. I've gone for Carlos Sainz. I don't think he's going to have a bad qualifying. Yes, I think he's going to get out qualified by Leclerc, but I still think he'll be in around that top 3. As I've said, I think the Ferrari upgrades, they seem so confident with them. Fred Vasseur just seems like this is going to, he said they're going to be fighting for the win this weekend. So I think Carlos Sainz is a good enough driver and he's in good enough form that he is going to be able to stick around, even if Charles Leclerc does take his, driving to another level this weekend, which I think he might do. I still think that Carlos Sainz is going to be able to hang in there with him. We obviously saw last year at the home Grand Prix, you did obviously especially, he had a really good race there, and he was saying about how special it was to drive in front of the home crowd, the Tifosi. So I think that will come into play a little bit as well. But P2, I have gone for his teammate Charles Leclerc. Even though I predicted him on pole, I don't quite think he's going to have enough. And of course, I've gone for P1, Max Verstappen. No McLaren boys on my podium. I think they were really quick in Miami, but I still think that the other teams bringing upgrades, I think they'll be in and around them, and I don't think they're going to be miles off the pace, but I just think that Red Bull, they're Red Bull. They're not going to have 2 bad weekends in a row, surely. So I think Max will, I think he'll have that drive and grit and determination, and I think he'll come through, get P1, and Charles Leclerc, still a good weekend, coming home P2.
Yeah, it's certainly frustrating that, McLaren have finally brought a fight to Red Bull winning a Grand Prix, and then Red Bull bring upgrades straight away the next weekend and potentially will just be miles ahead again. But I have still faith in the McLaren boys, and I've gone for Lando Norris to take 3rd spot on that podium. I still think they'll be around the fight like you said, but I think Lando, maybe a bit of motivation obviously from last weekend, some positivity, will still be up there and will take 3rd place. And then in 2nd, I've gone similar to you. Charles Leclerc, I think he's going to be pole sitter, and I don't think he's going to drop off the mark too much, but I do think Max Verstappen is going to go and take that victory from him, because you can't stop Max Verstappen, especially in a brand new car with new shiny parts, and he's just going to be a lot faster, and it's nothing really Charles Leclerc can do about it. But so Max in 1st, Charles in 2nd, and Lando Norris in 3rd. And of course Rudy's He's gone for first place, his pole sitter, Max Verstappen, Charles Leclerc in second, and Sergio Perez, Max's teammate, to be in third place. So, of course, the only other non-Red Bull driver would be Charles Leclerc. I mean, we're all kind of hoping on a Charles Leclerc good weekend here, but I think it certainly will. Home race, he loves a home race. He, suppose he'd take him in as one of his own. Just because we've said all these drivers to be on the podium does not mean that they are our driver of the day. So who have you gone for your driver of the day, Seb?
I've gone for someone who I might be reading a bit too much into their performance last weekend. I've gone for Lewis Hamilton. Obviously hasn't had a great start to the season, but last time out wasn't too bad. I think he definitely seems to be a bit more at home with the car. And obviously they've said that they're bringing upgrades. So I know that Mercedes upgrades you can't entirely trust in these days. And I don't actually think they're going to be great, but I do think as the weekend evolves, they'll get more to grips with them. And I think in the race, Hamilton's race pace, we know it's amazing. That's why he's considered one of the best of all time, arguably the best of all time. It's, he is obviously incredible in qualifying, but it is his race pace, which is the key factor, which is, won him his 7 titles. And we've seen that difference between him and Russell over the years. They've been together, and I still think that will continue this weekend. And I think that even if Hamilton starts maybe P7, P8, I think he will be able to work his way up to get, maybe a P5, make some good moves, and he's going to be my driver of the day.
Yeah, I think it's about time that Hamilton finally has a good weekend, one that goes his way. And I think at some point in the season, he will, push on and, potentially be above his teammate George Russell. But I've gone for a driver who you mentioned in qualifying, Seb. I've gone for Yuki Tsunoda, and that is just due to his amazing start to the season. I mean, he's been incredible for RB, and of course they brought upgrades last week, looked really impressive, getting points again. Obviously in the sprint race with Daniel Ricciardo and Yuki Tsunoda in the actual race as well. I just want to secure more points in this lead of our prediction table. So I feel like he's a sure thing these days, Yuki Tsunoda, and I've gone with him for my driver of the day. And I think Rudy's thought the exact same thing as me, because he's also gone for Yuki Tsunoda. And I think, I'm sure it's probably similar reasons. Been so impressive this season. Due to him signing that contract this week, I just think, there's that bit of expectation on him to, perform at least, and I think he's going to be nowhere near the points. But what have you gone for, Seb?
I also found it really difficult for the flop in the race as well. I mean, maybe thinking logically, as you said, Williams, they've had really poor performances so far this year, and Logan Sargent just doesn't seem to be getting, actually had maybe a more positive weekend than usual at Miami, but still crashed out in the race. So even when it goes well for him, he still crashes. So maybe logically, I should probably have gone for him. I've gone for Lando Norris, and even though I said that I think McLaren actually are going to be able to fight for the podium, I think that, just purely not being on the podium, and I think that Piastri maybe potentially, finishing ahead of him in the race, I think that will be enough for me to say would be the flop. Just obviously when you compare it as well to last time out in Miami, the high of winning, and I think coming back down, maybe finishing like a P5, I think that's going to feel a little bit of a letdown for him. So I think that I still think he's going to have an okay weekend, and I still don't think it will necessarily be his fault, but I'm going to go for Lando Norris.
Yeah, well, I'm not happy about that. Rudy has gone for Valtteri Bottas, and I mean,
it's a bit random.
I don't know what to say. I don't know what his reason is.
What counts as a flop race for Bottas?
I mean, he's been nowhere near the points for a lot of races. I mean, they were kind of near it in the sprint race, 9th and 10th, but that doesn't mean points, so it's nothing really. But yeah, I mean, there's not much expectation. Maybe Rudy's just hoping up for a lot from Bottas, but Rudy's gone from Bottas, and bit of a strange one, but fair enough. Fair enough. But who have you gone for your best team this weekend, Seb?
I think my predictions probably, you can already tell what I'm going to say. I'm going to say Ferrari. I think that, a double podium at home, I think that their upgrades are going to put them right in the fight with Red Bull. And I think that even though Max Verstappen, he's Max Verstappen and he'll come through in the end, I still think that the upgrades that Ferrari will bring this weekend, I think, will set the tune for the rest of their season. I think they'll be really happy with their weekend. The fact that they'll be able to actually fight competitively with Max, and Max hopefully won't be, 20 seconds up the road or even 10 seconds up the road. I think that will constitute them having, the best weekend for a team this season.
Yeah.
You know what I mean.
Of course, you actually went for a double Ferrari podium, so that makes sense. I've also gone for Ferrari as my team of the week. end. But yeah, I just think I haven't gone for Carlos Sainz on the podium, and I also haven't gone for him for any of my positive driver predictions. However, I still think he's going to be up there. I think he's going to be competing, and you know, it's easy to say Red Bull Team of the Week, but I genuinely think Max Verstappen is going to be carrying that team this weekend, and Sergio Perez is not going to be really in a fight at all. I think he's going to be in the points, but yeah, I don't think he's going to be fighting with the other two Ferraris, the McLarens or Max. So yeah, I'm going to go with Ferrari, and I think these upgrades are going to give them some positivity, obviously, for the rest of the season, that they can bring a fight to Red Bull. Rudy, once again, gone for a bit of a rogue Rudy, and he's gone with Alpine. And do you know any reason why he would have gone with Alpine, Seb?
I mean, they looked a little bit better in Miami. Obviously got their first point of the season. But I feel like that was, you know, a case of, you know, Aston Martin had a really poor weekend. Maybe, you know, both of the RBs weren't there to capitalise. You know, Ricciardo wasn't there to capitalise as well. So, yeah, I can't quite see it this weekend, unless maybe they get lucky again with safety cars and things like that. But I think they'll be, you know, somewhat competitive in terms of pace, but I can't see them being the best team. I mean, I hope they are, but yeah, it's another strange one. Bottas, Alpine, Rudy, what what have you done?
Well, to be fair to him, he's gone and correlated that really well with his shock predictions. So, of course, we do shock predictions here, and depending on how shocking it is, the more points you get. And we've only actually had one right this season, and it was mine. And I can't even remember what it was. Oh, it was for McLaren to get on the podium in Japan after, no, China, after we really slagged them off. But Rudy has correlated with that prediction of Team of the weekend, and he has gone for Alpine to get some more points. Which, I mean, is that a shock after obviously getting them last week? I don't know, but that, you know, maybe if he gets it right, he gets a point. But we'll decide how many points he gets, because I don't know how shocking it is. But it's fair. I mean, after the season, you know, the start they've had, I mean, them getting any points is a bit of a shock. So I get where he's coming from. But what have you gone with for your shock prediction, Seb?
I've gone for a shock prediction involving the other Italian team on the grid. I've gone for a double RB Q3 appearance. We've gone for a lot of Q3 appearances in our shock predictions, and I'm not entirely sure how shocking this is, considering, you know, we've seen the form of Yuki Tsunoda and we've seen the glimpses of Daniel Ricciardo this season. I think the shocking thing is that they're just, neither of them are put together at the same time, sort of thing. So I think that would be the shocking thing. And obviously, with how competitive it is to get into Q3, I think that it would be a bit of a shock for them both to get into Q3. I can see it happening, and that's why I've gone for it. So I don't think, that's why I'm saying it's not the most shocking prediction, but yeah, I don't know. What do you think of that one?
I feel like I've been really harsh on Daniel Ricciardo this season, because I don't know, I just feel like he's not got the motivation anymore. But I actually do think there'll be a time, and of course in Miami he came fourth in the sprint, which was incredible, and then in quali he didn't make it out of Q1, but that was, you know, largely down to the fact that the times are really weird in Miami. On the, you know, Lando Norris set the fastest time in SQ2 with mediums, and no one set a faster lap until SQ3, and that was Charles Leclerc. No, Q3 on the actual qualifying day, so it took someone a whole day to go faster than Lando Norris with mediums on. So I don't think it was totally his fault, it was just bad luck, I guess. Sometimes that happens in Formula 1, and I think due to that positivity from the sprint race, Daniel Ricciardo can potentially push on this weekend. He's got some great upgrades, and I feel like that could definitely happen. And I think it would be a shock, because like you said, they've not put in the similar, you know, sort of performances at the exact same time. It's always been one driver's had a better weekend than the other. But for my shock prediction, I feel like, because I didn't go for it last weekend, even though I said it on the podcast, is that Lando Norris is going to win, and I think he's going to win again. And I know I've gone for him with third on the podium, but this is just my little extra, just in case, my little security. And maybe the upgrades from Red Bull, from Ferrari, either don't work, aren't that good, or just don't work around Imola. And I feel like these upgrades from McLaren last week will work well on the track in Imola, and potentially, you know, they're a bit more used to the car now, they know a lot more about their upgrades, and potentially, you never know, safety car could come out again. Lando Norris goes and wins a second Grand Prix in a row. First time, when was it, Seth, that's you know, a driver's won 2 consecutive races that's not a Red Bull driver?
I think it was Lewis Hamilton at the back end of 2021 when he went on that 3 winning races in a row streak to obviously keep his championship fights alive. So that was obviously a long time ago, but it was a British driver. So
yeah, well, I'm going to have Lando double win, even though I've gone for Max in first on the podium. But
I think that would be. I think you get more points than if you'd predicted it last time.
Do you think?
Yeah, 2 in a row. I think that's even more shocking.
Well, I'm going with it. I'm going with Lando. Can't let me down this weekend. So I'll be watching this weekend. I won't be in Wakefield. But yeah, that is pretty much it for this episode. Make sure to tune in for our review where we'll find out how well we've done with these predictions. Not normally that well, but you know, I am flying high and hopefully I can remain in the lead. I'm coming Max Verstappen hopefully and taking off, and yeah. But yeah, thanks so much for joining us and we'll see you next time. Bye.